Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make these beautiful map coasters. These are single layer map coasters coated with epoxy resin and backed with some cork. This is actually a pretty simple project, so let me show you how I did it. For the map, I used Laser Map Maker. I engraved and cut the wood with my xTools M1 Ultra, and I added epoxy resin from Let's Resin. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Let's head over to Laser Map Maker and start a new project. Give it a project name. And here I like to start with the starter template. Here's the default map showing New York City. We're going to go and search for our location. Here we are at Newport Beach. I'm going to adjust the map to the area I want to capture. And here we're going to choose a map shape. For a coaster, I'm going to choose circle. Let's adjust the map one more time. Once we're happy with the map, let's go ahead and make changes to the layers. Since my coaster is single layer, let's go ahead and delete the land layer cut and also the roads layer. I'm going to keep the land layer engrave. Okay, now with the two layers gone, let's go ahead and add back in some of the elements we deleted. But first, we're going to change the border. The default border is too thick for a coaster. I'm going to change the color to red and the width to 3. Now we have a nice thin border. Let's update the layer features. Add back in the water outlines. Here under Roads and Roadways, I'm going to select Motorway Trunk, Primary, Secondary Streets, and Secondary Tertiary. Now we can go and adjust the thickness of the roads. I like to go to Toggle Inspect mode. This is a really cool feature that identifies the type of feature your mouse is hovering over. Here I can see that this is the roadway's primary. This road here is the roadway's secondary tertiary. This is roadway's primary streets. And if you click on it, the layers on the left actually lights up, making it really easy to find. So let's go in there and make some adjustments. For the roadway's primary, I want the line width to be smaller. And the roadway's secondary tertiary, I also want it to be smaller. Here you can see that the changes have been made to the map. And if you're not sure if you want certain types of roadways to be on your map, you can go to it and hide it and see what your map looks like. You can't select specific roads, but you can select the road type. Once you've determined you don't want a certain type of roadways, you must delete it. Remember, hiding it here on the workspace does not hide it from the export. So everything listed on the left will export whether or not you've hidden it. Usually before I export, I also like to see what my map looks like without the satellite overlay. The satellite overlay does not export and is only used for reference as you work. So this is what your map will look like. Once we're happy with everything, let's go to Preview Export. Here you can take one last look at the map. Double check the export settings, and let's export. Exporting will take a minute or two. And when it's ready, this download zip button will light up. Okay, it's ready. Let's go ahead and download the output. When downloaded, the file is zipped up. You must unzip or extract it before you can work with it. Alright, so now this file is ready and we can use it in our laser software. Since I'm using the xTools M1 Ultra, I'll be working in the XCS software. I'm going to go ahead and drag in my file to workspace. Here is my map. This is at 12 inches, so I'm going to resize it and then zoom in. Here in the layers area, I'm going to ungroup the map and do a little bit of cleanup. I'm going to go ahead and delete the square around my map. And I also check for anything I don't want engraved. Here I find that there are a few bits of lines around the border that I don't need. I'm not really sure what they are, but they seem to be something that's generated with a map. Since I don't want any extra engravings or cuts on my map, I'm going to go ahead and delete them. Next, let's go ahead and add another circle around the map. This circle is going to be set as a cut. And then we're going to add some text. Here we're going to say Newport Beach. Let's adjust the size so that's smaller. And then we're going to curve it so it goes around the circle. On the bottom, we're going to do the same and type in California. Resize it and align it to the bottom. Finally, we're going to make sure the settings is correct for the laser machine and materials we're engraving on. Now let's move on to engraving. I'm going to be using my xTools M1 Ultra to engrave and cut the wood. In addition, I'm also going to use wood that has been treated with borax. As you can see here from my test, wood that has been treated with borax comes out much darker. However, the drawback is that it is mostly soot that you're seeing and it does smear. So over here with no borax, the engraving does not smear, but the one with borax, you do see this kind of smearing if you touch it. However, if you seal it with epoxy resin or with some UV resin, then the engraving is safe. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to engrave with the wood that has been treated with borax, and then we're going to coat it with some epoxy resin to make sure that it does not smear. Here's the laser doing its magic. I really love watching this process. And we're done. Here it is. Look at this. It looks so nice. And remember, at this point, make sure to not touch the engraving. Now we're going to seal the coaster with epoxy resin. During this process, we're going to be careful and not touch the engraving because we're going to smear it. I've gone ahead and mixed the resin. Now we're going to pour it directly on the wood. Here we're going to carefully spread it out, making sure not to disturb the engraving. Here's a quick blast from the heat gun to dispel the bubbles. Alright everyone, so it's been a day and our coasters are done. So here I have two of them, and as you can see, the resin gave it a really nice coating. So it's super smooth and very glossy. So the last thing we need to do is add the cork backing. So I got these corks that are already pre-cut. Peel off the paper. And stick it on. It's a perfect fit. There's our coaster. And there's our second one. So our set of coasters is done. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you next time. Bye!